Hello and welcome back again. My name is Sharon and this week we're going to look at another one of the interpretive floral designs. Now last week, and I'll link it here in the cards, we did a design that was suitable to celebrate Burns Night. So this week I'm looking at creating a design that will help us celebrate Chinese New Year. Okay, so I've done the same as last week. I've done quite a lot of research just to check that the information that is somewhere in the back of my brain is correct and relevant. Now I will say at this stage, a little bit of a disclaimer, I do apologise if I've misunderstood any of the information that I've read. But the reason that I've chosen this material is because of its symbolic meaning in Chinese culture. So I've got some red roses. Now this is going to give us the red colouring, which in Chinese symbolism represents happiness, prosperity, hope, vitality, and of course good luck. Then I've got some yellow chrysanthemums, which is the closest I could get to the gold colour, and the gold represents good luck and fortune. Now in Chinese symbolism and Chinese culture, the chrysanthemum can have two meanings, so you have to be a little bit careful of where you use it. The chrysanthemum can represent long and happy life if given as a gift, but it can't be used at the graveside because it represents misfortune. Then I have some little satsumas, and the orange colour and the shape represents the sun, and this is a sign of abundance and vitality. Then I have some pussy willow, which represents growth and abundant fortune, and might be a little bit of a giveaway to the shape of the design that I'm going to create. Now my initial thoughts are to use two different types of foliage. I'm not going to use all of this, but this is a florist foliage called Ruscus, Italian Ruscus or soft Ruscus, and then I have an Aralia or a Fatsia japonica, which I'm going to use to give me some base weight. So that's my two types of foliage. And then I've got some accessories to include in as well. And I've got these really sweet little lanterns. Oh, that one's upside down. So I've got an orange one, which will replicate the colours of the satsumas and also repeat the shape, that lovely circular shape. And then I've got the red lantern, which is going to pick up on my red roses. Then to introduce a different shape and a larger shape into the arrangement, I've got these really pretty little fans that I've picked up in my Chinese supermarket. So if you want some items to make a design for Chinese New Year, don't leave it too late. Pop into your local Chinese supermarket or order them online, but there are lots of options available for you, and you'll find a whole host of items, often in the red and gold colour combination, which is of course those lucky colours in Chinese culture. Okay, so let's get started. Now you might be wondering, how am I going to hang these lanterns within the flower arrangement? Well, it's a good question, and I've chosen to use this circular frame. Now these are currently used in wedding arrangements. We use them a lot on table centres, and we create a crescent shaped design around the outside, which means there's plenty of room across the table for people to be able to talk to one another. So this is going to create a fantastic framework for me to hang those lanterns from, and that now maybe makes it more clear as to why I've created these shapes with the pussy willow. What I've done with these is I've just used the warmth of my hand again to manipulate them to give me a curved shape, and they're really going to accentuate that circular framework. Now my plan is to go asymmetrical, so we'll go taller on one side than the other, and that means that it was going to give me ample space here to hang these really sweet little lanterns. So I'm going to aim to have one a bit longer than the other. Now that's got to be really tight there to prevent it from sliding up and down the framework. And in hindsight, I probably would have used ribbon to make this a bit more attractive, but I've got wire by my side. And you know, it just goes to show that quite often when you're creating floral designs, it doesn't go the way you initially were expecting it to go. Now I'm just going to make this wire a bit longer. I've cut it too short, and for this I'm just using a roll of the florist wire that we often use to make Christmas wreaths with. This is mossing wire or real wire. I did look for a decorative red real wire, but I didn't have any here in stock. So that would be my evaluation for this design, would be to make a much nicer fixing for my 2 lanterns. But isn't that lovely? Already we've got that oriental and eastern sort of vibe coming from my arrangement. Right, so next we're going to get the framework together. Now we're working with just your ordinary green floral foam. I'm trying to switch mechanics with each design. So you'll see, and I'll link it in the cards above, you'll see some designs where I've used the agra wool instead of the floral foam, which is a much better version for the environment. Now what I'm going to start doing is gauging my height. So I'm going to try and follow as much of the circular framework as I possibly can. And that looks quite nice there. Now I'm rather than going the same length the opposite side, which will then almost hide those 2 little lanterns, I'm going to go shorter on this side. So if you think about the overall size of the ring, I'm almost going into 2/3 of the size of that overall ring, and then I'm leaving 1/3 empty. So we're still looking at those very traditional 1/3, 2/3 proportions, but this time I'm creating it or using those proportions to get me an asymmetrical crescent shape design. So it's almost like a 2/3 of a circular design. Okay, so let's get a few more of these pussy willow into place. Now my question at this point to myself would be, is it going to be an all-round design, or is it going to be something that's just going to be seen from the front? And I think that this would be fantastic on an entranceway, maybe on a hall table, or it could go in a restaurant or on the counter of maybe a Chinese takeaway to help them celebrate New Year. So I'm thinking of doing it front facing. So the majority of the flowers are going to be one side, and then we're just going to neatly cover up the back and make sure all our mechanics are covered. Now I've got the basic sort of outline in there with the pussy willow. Now I'm going to do the same with the Ruscus. I'm just going to bend it a little bit so that it becomes more pliable, and it will help me create more of a crescent sort of shape. And what I can do if I want is just use a little bit of florist wire or even florist tape just to hold it to the framework if it decides it's not going to stay in the position that I want it to go. And then I'm going to recreate that shape on the opposite side, but using a smaller piece of the Ruscus. So again, we're looking at it being longer on one side than the other. I'll just put in a few more pieces and then we'll swing it round for you to see. But what I don't want to do is lose the shape. Now again, if I link it just in the cards above, you can go back and look at the Back to Basics series where I do this design in a much simpler form. I think we've done it a couple of times in a variety of ways. And a lot of people, I think, still think of the crescent shapes like this and the Hogarth curve as being quite old-fashioned designs. And what you've really got to think about is how you can make those basic rules into something a bit more fanciful and a bit more modern and, you know, a little bit more creative. The crescent shape that I'm using today is really very popular at the moment in bridal work with this very loose boho asymmetric style that we're looking for. It's just a lot of people don't realise that what they are creating is this crescent shape. It's just much looser and much softer. But if you look at the overall shape of the design, it's most definitely either a crescent like this or a Hogarth curve. Okay, so at the moment I'm just bringing some foliage to the back. It's important that we cover the tape and we cover our frame so that the design is neat. And now what I'm going to do here at the base is I'm going to add some of these larger leaves. So this is the Fatsia, well, it's what I know as a florist as Aralia, but if you're a gardener, it's very similar to the British Fatsia japonica that we have growing in the garden. And this is a really big flat leaf, like the shape of your hand. So it's a palmate leaf, and it's going to give me some really dramatic base weight. And it's a completely different shape to the Ruscus that we added on the outside. This is going to give me a really good contrast in shape and texture. Okay, so let's just turn that round for you so you can see how it's coming along. Now at the moment we've got the soft Ruscus on the outside, and you know, I always say flappy wings on the outside, and then we've got this very solid shape in the middle here with the Aralia or the Fatsia. But as I introduce more materials, hopefully that very strong contrast against the two materials will soften a little bit. So at the moment might look a bit odd, but it will soften as we bring the design together. Right, okay. And again, similarly, at the moment I've only got the Pussy Willow on the outside, and this is a line material, so it makes your eye travel upwards, makes your eye follow the circle all the way around to this side where it picks up the Pussy Willow on this side. But as I progress, I'll introduce a little bit more here to the centre. Now at this stage we're going to start putting our main flowers into the floral design, and we're going to bring this really big chrysanthemum bloom from one side through to the other. So we're creating that asymmetrical crescent shape, so that lopsided crescent shape. Now you can see there that the stem of that chrysanthemum is quite prominent, and it's a very straight line. So what we will do as we work through is soften that line with some foliage a bit later on, or maybe some of the Pussy Willow even. And I've got 5, so I'm looking to get 3 on this side and then 2 on the opposite side, which will give me the shorter side. So we're looking to create that sweeping crescent there through the middle. Now most of my chrysanthemum blooms are a similar size. If I had an option, I would use the bigger one here towards the sort of focal point, but there's not much difference in them. And if you didn't have a chrysanthemum bloom like I have here, you could use another large flower, carnation maybe, or a single rose. And don't forget the sort of symbolic meaning for me choosing these chrysanthemum blooms. Right, so let's bring that curve, continue that nice shape over to the opposite side, and hopefully you'll be able to see how that crescent shape is forming. Now to make it unbalanced and asymmetrical, the heights need to be different. And you can see now why I didn't make it symmetrical and bring the chrysanthemum up to this height, because it would interfere with the decoration there of my pretty little lanterns. And now I'm going to introduce the rose, and I'm going to do the same with the rose. I'm going to bring that from one side to the other and continue that line of material through the front. So 2 colours that really contrast against one another, and you find that a lot in Oriental designs. They quite often pick very clashing colour combinations. Now I'm not quite sure how many of the roses I'm going to use. We'll see how the colour and the shape works. But again, I'm just really looking to repeat that line that I've created with the chrysanthemum. So I might put another red rose in here in a minute to bring some height. We'll see as we go along. Now a bit of that red colour to the front. Gorgeous flower heads on these roses, a really, really pretty rose. And I'm going to do the same on this side, just bring a shorter rose and less quantity. Yeah, I'm going to put another taller rose in. If I just swing that round for you to see, I'd like to bring a bit of that red colour in up here. And you can see that the gap between my chrysanthemum bloom and my foliage and my Pussy Willow there. There's quite a big gap in between them, so I'm thinking I need to introduce a red up here on the longer side. Now, let's tuck that in and see how that works in there. Now, this chrysanthemum that I was a bit concerned about, that the stem... Right, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to take that one out. I've cut that a little bit too short. So I'm going to use a fresh rose, another rose. Work my way in from the back. Now, the chrysanthemum that I've got in my hand here, this tallest chrysanthemum, I was a bit concerned that the stem, this is proving to be a little bit of a tricky placement with this one. Let's turn it around and look at it from the back. Now, this one I was a bit concerned that we were going to end up with quite a lot of the stem showing. Yeah, that's better. But now I've introduced all the other flower types in there. I've hidden that chrysanthemum stem, so it doesn't look quite as obtrusive as I'd anticipated. But what I now have ended up with is the chrysanthemum there, rose, sorry, there. This rose stem here is quite dominant, so we can cover that in a moment with some more of the foliage. And then I'm just going to work one more rose in on the shorter side so that the red colour is fairly evenly distributed. And that, I think, has worked out really well. I'm quite pleased with that so far. Now, before I go filling in with any greenery, we're going to add in the accessories. Let's just get rid of some of my rubbish from the back here. So now I'm going to introduce the satsumas, and what I'm going to do with these, I've got myself some little cocktail sticks. Could be cocktail sticks, kebab sticks, any spare stalks from the bottom of your flowers. And what I'm going to do with these is just insert the kebab sticks into the end so that we've got a support and almost like a prong there. And these are going to be brought into the centre of the arrangement. And it's going to introduce that lovely orange colour. It's going to give me a beautiful link between those lanterns at the top and give me another shape, nice texture. And I'm almost going to sort of feed them in through the centre there. So they're not overly dominant, but they are in the design. And a sign of good luck and good fortune, and a lovely complement then to the colour combination. Now, this one here at the back is a little bit low, so if I remove that, I'm going to instead use the stalk off the bottom of the Pussy Willow here, and that will give me a bit of a taller placement. Those lovely orange satsumas are really concentrated there on the focal point in the middle. And I think for the moment I'm only going to put the 3 in. And we've still got the fans, and we've still got some of the foliage to use to fill in the gaps. So now what I'm going to do is introduce the fans, and these can sit quite comfortably in between the flowers. It's a little bit fiddly because it's quite hard to hold the paper part of the fan without damaging it. So there we are, that's great. Now what I'm not going to do is angle them perfectly forward. So if I show you with 2 of these fans, if I angle them in this sort of position here, they become very dominant and very overpowering. So I'm almost going to angle them slightly offset so that they don't become really visually very dominant in the design. And this is a really good example of repeating shapes. So one of the principles and elements of design is repetition, and we're repeating that circle in the lanterns, in the framework, and in the flower combinations as well. Right, now I'm hoping to get 3 in there. Again, probably might have been more beneficial to put these in before my satsumas, but you know, we don't mind making a little mistake from time to time. Right, now let's find the floral foam. Oh, that was just the handle. Don't panic too much. Now what I've actually done with the bottom of the lanterns is I've cut off the fatter part of the base so that I have a point to insert into the floral foam. Now you could mount them on wires if you prefer. You could have glued them onto a kebab stick. But for the moment that's working quite well. And I think that's looking really nice at the moment. I'm quite happy so far how that's coming together. So we've brought in now those lovely shapes of the fans. And even though the white can be quite a strong dominant flower, it's going to pick up on the white of my Pussy Willow there on the outside. And now what I'm going to do is hide the stem of that rose, because that looks quite ugly there, without overcrowding it and overfilling. And I'm going to bring in some more of the Pussy Willow so that we're continuing again that colour and that texture all the way through from one side to the other. Now the Pussy Willow this time of the year you can quite often pick up in supermarkets. Now I'm just going to continue with a few pieces of the Pussy Willow. I don't think we need a great deal of it. Again, I think it's got that lovely oriental feel to it. And I'm going to work my way through from one side to the other. And I think my final piece of Pussy Willow here at the base. No, actually we're going to come up here towards the top section. And I think possibly we're pretty much finished. I think a little bit, this leaf here at the front, this large sort of Fatsia here is a little bit dominant. So I'm going to just tuck in a soft piece of the Ruscus, and hopefully it'll prevent that big leaf there at the front becoming too overpowering. And I'm going to move. Now there's nothing wrong with doing this at this stage. If you feel that something's in the wrong place, I just feel that this little clementine, this satsuma at the front here is too low and it's just lost by that large leaf. Much better, I'm much more pleased with that. So what do we think? Happy New Year, Happy Chinese New Year. So I think that would look fantastic in the entranceway of any home, and that's my take on Chinese New Year. I hope you've enjoyed another one of the interpretive designs. Don't forget, if you've really been enjoying, to subscribe to the channel. Click on that bell to be notified every time I upload a new tutorial, and we look forward to seeing you again very soon. Bye for now.